Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to this Workforce Wednesday webinar, Work-Based Learning in Illinois, Insights and Action. We're very excited to have you here. My name is Antonio Gomez. I work for the Illinois Center for Specialized Professional Support based out of Illinois State University. I will be your moderator and technical support for today. So any questions that you have throughout, we will have a Q&A section to this webinar. But if you have anything in the meantime, feel free to either use the Q&A function, which if you have any problems accessing it, go ahead and drop something in the chat or drop it in the chat and we'll take care of it. If you have any technical issues, please feel free to just drop it in the chat. I'll help you out with any of that. The webinar will be recorded. It'll be available on the Illinois Workforce Academy in 48 hours. We do have closed captioning available as well, so feel free to turn that on if you would like to. And we do invite comments from the work group throughout. I'm going to be going through as soon as I finish this little introduction and admitting everybody as a panelist who is in the work group because we want your input along the presentation if you have any comments to add. We want this to be interactive within the work group. For everybody else, though, if you have any questions or you would like to make a comment, please feel free to raise your hand and we'll address it. The more efficient way will be to use the Q&A option, and then we will get to it as soon as we can. To get us started, I'm going to launch a few polls. So our first poll is our partner poll. So which partner do you represent? And we'll give about 10, 15 seconds. All right, I'm going to go ahead and end that poll. And it looks as though we've got a decent amount of Title I, some Title II, some Title IV, and then other WIO partners and stakeholders. We're very happy to have all of you here. Our next poll is location. So I'm going to go ahead and launch that. It's not letting me click it, so we're not going to launch that one. Totally fine. We're just going to go ahead and dive straight into the presentation. So, sorry, this is not letting me click. There we go. I apologize. My computer's being glitchy. First off, I want to introduce our speaker, Daniel Sirota, the VP of Government and Public Affairs at Aon, also the chair of the work group. Is everybody seeing the presentation and not my back end?
I think we may see your back end. There's a thing in the middle there.
Oh, interesting. There we go. Is that better?
Perfect. Okay. Yes, thanks.
Excellent. My apologies. So Daniel Sirota, VP of Government and Public Affairs at Aon and the chair of the Work-Based Learning and Apprenticeship Committee. I also want to introduce our new vice chair of the work group, Stephen Lefevre, and I will be admitting the work group as panelists as you join. But without further ado, Daniel, take it away.
Sure. Well, look, thanks everyone for joining, and for some, happy first day of school. I know my boys went off today. It's summer is coming to an end, unfortunately, even though the weather is hot and warm here, at least in Chicago. We'll see when winter will probably be here as we know it, as everyone in Illinois knows. But look, first, I want to thank you for being a part of this session and webinar today. My goal is for you to be able to have an understanding of what we've done over the past couple of months, but also really start creating a broader framework of things that we're going to be focused on in the future. Antonio, if you can go to the next slide. Part of what I wanted to try to accomplish, one of the strategic plan alignments for the Illinois Workforce Innovation Board, where I sit as chair of Apprenticeship Illinois, is to actually start looking at work-based learning as an opportunity for our committee to start engaging. So I worked with Antonio and Jen, and I was like, I got to get some smart people engaged from not only a national side, but also locally, people that are really into the weeds around this topic. I wanted to make sure we put out a broad report, which we'll discuss and being able to walk through today, but really hit home on the direction and opportunities of recommendations to continue to make Illinois one of the top and one of the best across the country. I think we've done as a whole a pretty good job around apprenticeship. And I think now is kind of this next level opportunity for us to really amplify in and around work-based learning. So as you can see, the members of the committee on this group, big shout out to Steve Lefevre, who's our new vice chair, but Larry Fitzpatrick from Employment Employer Services, Jason Klein from the College of Education Center for P20 Engagement, Laz Lopez from the High School District 214. We had Laura Love from Strata. We had Brett Pardon from CareerWise, Julio, who I'm assuming everyone knows, and Erica Thyman from the Illinois State Board of Education, Whitney Thompson from the Community Board, Deb Watson from Burning Glass, and Taylor White from New America. So as you can see, we brought in national players that really see it from a holistic vantage point, and then local players to help us really guide through it. You can go to the next slide. Today, we're going to talk about our background just a little bit deeper into some of the data that we found. We'll talk a little bit about the certain data that's around here. We'll go through some of the literature, and then where there's also gaps, where I'm going to also ask some of our working group members to get engaged. We'll walk through some of the recommendations we came out with based on some of the findings we saw, but also some of the things we saw on a national scale. And one of the biggest things and why I wanted to have this webinar was to really get feedback, really get engagement. This is something that as an organization, we want to make sure we're hearing from everyone in a strategic way, but also working together. The more employers that understand work-based learning, the direction it's going, the better. The more ways we can get employers locked in some of these types of, workforce development, the better. So, it's really on all of us to really work out there and being able to educate people, but also bring people to the table. Really make sure people are on the same page and working towards that side of it. So, Antonio, you want to go to the next slide? Keep it going. So, what was the purpose of the report? As I kind of alluded to, was to gather experts from both ends of a national and local lens to really take a look and lend their expertise around the data. We wanted to conduct a broad literature review of what has happened, where is it going, take it to the next level to start providing recommendations, and then really, how do we continue to expand and grow WBL to that next level? I have the fortunate pleasure of being chair of the apprenticeship committee. Adding the work-based learning side is new to this committee, and how we can expand, how can we take it to that next level and grow. The work-based learning apprenticeship committee is volunteer-based. We have people all across the country or all across the state really engaged in really helping drive growth. And we want to continue to do that. And that's the purpose of what we created here into this report. Antonio, can you go to the next slide? I apologize. I've been a little bit under the weather, so apologies. Key findings. Let's go to the next slide on some of the data. As you can see, oh, nope. Oh, sorry. I skipped a slide. Our apprenticeship framework has really a dual strategy that we are looking to utilize and continue to utilize. We have apprenticeship specialists that continue to sit in the local regions across that really focus on being that person to help an employer, help a trade, help a community colleges, make sure all the trains go and moving forward. But they can also assist with any type of work-based learning programming as well. And then we also have apprenticeship intermediaries that focus on the supply chain and the participant front of this, which really creates great value for us as we start moving forward to really emphasize that we are really thinking about the employer, but we're really thinking about making sure that every part of the apprenticeship program is covered in this strategy. Do you want to go to the next slide? This slide is data we received from, thank you, Jen Foyle, from DECO that really covers from ICCB, IDHS, ISB, and part of this slide that it really hits is it really, as you can see, we are continuing to see growth. Big pop-up just came up on my screen. Sorry. We're continuing to see that this allows them for upskilling and opportunities to being able to elevate. Apprenticeship have been on the rise. Approximately 2,500 work-based learning enrollment has continued to grow each year. Pre-apprenticeship has been pretty stagnant across the board. But what this basically gives us an opportunity and a good framework is that WBL enrollment each year is at that lane. How can we continue to take it to that next level and grow it? Antonio, you want to go to the next slide? We continue to get support from across the board, from the Illinois Community Board, College Board. 80% offer apprenticeship programming. In 2019, that was at 50. 57% offered pre-apprenticeship programming. I think we could get that number up as well. And then 241 unique apprenticeship programs and 191 are registered with the Department of Labor, which is great. And we're hoping to be able to get more standardized apprenticeship programs registered with the DOL. And thank you for the 100% response rate. You can go to the next slide. This slide really hits home on the WBL support to customers with disabilities through two programs. So one is with the STEP program that collaborates with schools to provide career readiness services for students with disabilities. The second one is the pre-ETS program, which is really focused on students that receive guidance in jobs, explorations, workplace readiness, post-secondary planning, and self-advocacy. Can you go to the next one? The Illinois State Board of Education, ISB's Goal 6 expands across WBLA programs more broadly. And as you can see from that chart, WBL implementations are now an allowable expense. This is something that we've seen. WBL grants provide $1.8 million to regional CTE directors, which go to the funds of career fairs, job shadowing, worksite tours, enterprises, apprenticeship, internships, etc. So as you can see, the continual growth there. You can go to the next slide. These are based off of registered apprenticeship programs. As you can see, the continuous growth of active and also new. We've seen a little bit of a decline from construction, but we've also seen an increase in all other, right? Which is a good thing that we're continuing to expand and diversify beyond the trades. Can we go to the next slide? All right, key findings through what I alluded to with the literature. Go to the next slide. This was a very much state and national infrastructure. Lack of finalized state longitudinal data, the system exit and re-entering cases, customer movement across workforce services, long-term customer success rate, customer placement aligned with course of study, and need more trained personnel to input data. I think one of the things to being able to note is we really need to emphasize the state leadership across the board to get this across the finish line, to really make sure we're fostering our data and locking that in to be able to make sure we have holistically on what that may look like. Can we go to the next slide? On the infrastructure side of WBLA, these wide range across organizations of schools and states, this creates eligibility confusion. The Illinois Career Pathways Dictionary is the state's definition for Illinois. It's great that we have this, which is a great photo that really highlights the definition. However, we need to be able to continue to look and continue to grow this and emphasize this with a K-12 focus, and really making sure we're hitting the apprenticeship and work-based learning stuff home. You can go to the next slide, Antonio. Participant barriers. These are significant barriers, as probably everyone is aware of. One is transportation. Two is child and elder care. Three is course flexibility. Fourth is need for expanded wraparound services. And for high schoolers, school counselors don't have the time to provide the one-on-one career counseling. Go to the next slide. On the talent front, the talent need, right? So 2/3 of internships currently enroll in a 4-year degree, and 1/3 of them currently enroll in a 2-year degree. Success is we need to have employers thinking differently. We really need to be able to continue to grow that mantra and making sure we're having employers look at different pathways for growth, because it's going to create a different talent pipeline. We go to the next slide. Employer incentives, right? Financial support, coverage of programming costs, tax incentive. Many states, including Illinois, have procurement rules now to be able to grow apprenticeship in construction. The more ways we can really amplify, but really connect the dots for employers, the better. As somebody that works at Aon, we cover cost across the board. Some don't, right? There's small businesses and others that may not be able to do that. So if we're able to create that streamlined opportunity and something where you're able to help an employer really check the box off for continual growth, I think it's a great way to be able to do that. You go to the next slide. Some of the key findings. Go to the next slide. Data gaps. As I kind of alluded to, the lacks of longitudinal data tracking, lack of data systematically tracking participants or investments in each learned or learned opportunities. Just hearing too, Terry Stroh in the beginning, right? You had an internship. We got to make sure that stuff's into the data, right? As kind of the next phase of how that works. Key players of lack of access to data and the lack of data regarding employer cost-benefit ratio for WBLA programming. And I know that Strada, Laura Love, was extremely engaged in some of this work. So thank you, Laura, as we started dealing with this report and looking at that more broadly. And our recommendations, which is the next slide. So we have 5 recommendations that we laid out into this report that really hit home on some of the ways to being able to strengthen, but really take it to the next level. And these are really the shorter versions of it. We do have a little bit of a longer one, which Jen will send within the report, which is finish building the statewide longitudinal data system, improve data accuracy and usability, and enable secure data sharing. So this is really heavy on data and really making sure we're getting the data up to speed, ready to go, and accurate in a way to make it easy for folks to being able to implement, but also take it where we're able to know how the programs are doing and how we're taking it, moving them forward. You go to the next slide. Our second recommendation is to expand and support employer engagement and participation. So offer financial incentives and develop a centralized WBL resource hub. Use incubate worker training funding as a bridge for employers to start apprenticeship, and then launch a statewide awareness campaign for state leaders to utilize for promotion, but also to engage employers and participants to be able to be further engaged. Can you go to the next slide? Strengthen state infrastructure for WBL. So we want to strengthen the state's procurement strategy. We want to invest in intermediary organizations to coordinate with school employer partnership. We want to revise the statewide WBL definition, set statewide goals for WBL expansion, and align pre-apprenticeship with industry needs. Really important on that last point to make sure we are all aligned on the direction of where that goes. And as industries adjust based off new hire or new jobs, making sure the pre-apprenticeship follows. You go to the next slide. Support youth apprenticeship development. Implement a statewide standardized framework. Use specialists to coordinate and expand regionally. Align programs with funding. Focused on guiding and counseling on post-secondary planning. And develop a directory of youth apprenticeship. this is a big one too, because I do think there's an opportunity to continue to amplify this. Was very happy that Laz Lopez was able to be a part of this, who was very much embedded in a lot of the apprenticeship committee's work around youth apprenticeship. And we see a great opportunity to continue to add on and amplify. We also were fortunate to have Brent Parton, who was part of CareerWise, which is a nationwide intermediary that plays a great role in youth apprenticeship across the country. And I think our recommendations have been pretty spot on in and around this topic. Go to the next slide. And then the fifth one is address the barriers, right? So how do we increase investment in wraparound services, transportation, childcare, stipends to expand access to career counseling and case management? And also part of the career counseling side is really educating them, but also creating the access to understanding what career options are available. That is something that I think is critical to being able to do to make sure people are aligned and placing people in the jobs that work for them. Want to go to the next one? Our next steps today is gather feedback from folks like you on this call, 104. Thank you for joining, to being able to really get your feedback and thoughts as we start moving this forward. As we do announce this and push this forward through our committee, we would hope you would spread the word, pass this on, really highlight this, promote it via LinkedIn and other networks. We really want people to be aware of what our recommendation is, and being able to push this forward. And then we also will have a final review that will be designed to look pretty in the upcoming weeks, to then hopefully being able to share with you all first and then send it out to the world in the next coming months, hopefully sooner rather than later as we start getting organized. Tony, you want to go to the next slide? And now this is the Q&A portion. I went by that pretty quick to the fact that I really wanted to make sure we had time for question and answer. Antonio has sent out the report. This kind of gives you a high-level summary. I will also would love, I don't know if Antonio, we can get all the squares back of the different panelists, to being able to see who else is on. Oh, there we go. I would also love, Laz, I would love if you could maybe start us off just on your thoughts around the youth apprenticeship front, which was recommendation 4, and anything else that you think from that lens that was kind of critical for us to being able to hit on to kind of start off the Q&A part.
Absolutely. I'd be glad to. Thank you so much. And thanks, Daniel, for all your leadership and work, and the work of everybody that's been involved with this. On the youth apprenticeship front, and our recommendations really have been developed over the last 24 months. There was an extensive work that included employer surveys that really informed them. The biggest challenges for youth apprenticeships for in-school youth really is that this is not part of the regular work of schools. However, there is significant support around the state and in our state's education policy that supports expansion of work-based learning and specifically youth apprenticeships. There are school districts that have engaged in this work successfully and effectively, and there are some models now which were not the case just a few short years ago. And so I do think that it is ripe in communities for schools to and district offices to embrace it and expand it. It is part of a portfolio of work-based learning continuum. For some students, they have to choose between earning money today and their future tomorrow. What Youth Apprenticeships does is it helps address that question, and it allows someone to not just have to work anywhere, but work in a space that helps prepare them and accelerate their economic mobility in their industry of interest. And so with that, I certainly invite anybody who has any questions. The other piece I would say is there's a lot of opportunity in the pre-apprenticeship space, and there's a lot of work the State Department of Commerce, through its Illinois Works program, has really supported that. We are this year fortunate to be a recipient and working with Skills USA to have about 70 students in a pre-apprenticeship program in the trades specifically. I think we're one of the first high schools that's doing that, and we're certainly excited about that. I don't know if there's anything else specifically you want me to address, Dan?
No, that covers it. Look, and maybe I'll throw in, Jason, you've been somebody that has been engaged with us since the beginning of kind of building this report and getting further embedded. Any comments around the report and or things around where, you found it based on some of the literature and data and other things there?
Yeah, I'd be happy actually to piggyback on exactly where Dr. Lopez just kind of was going and went. And that is, I think with our statewide audience today, there's a couple of really critical things to keep in mind. One, we know that this challenge looks different in different parts of the state. What is in common in this challenge, and Dan already mentioned this during the going through the slides, is how we engage employers in the opportunities that are available here. And that's both on the policy side and in terms of what the incentives are, and then the relational side to help people know that they can trust that these things will work. And again, the challenges there look different for different employers across industries and across employer size. If I'm a small business with 10 employees, what taking on an intern or certainly a pre-apprentice or an apprentice looks like will look different than if I'm a significantly larger organization of 250 employees, for example. And so making sure that we continue to work, and I think we're doing a good job of this in Illinois. I think we have a strong community on both the workforce side and on the K-12 and community college sides of sharing our successes with one another. That's going to continue to be critical as we move forward. And then the other piece is what are those incentives, right? How do we get people to the table? And resources are always tight. And so how do we ensure that? I think Dr. Lopez's comment about how this can help the individual student have opportunities for the long term, but also make money today. I mean, that is critical. Those of us that have worked in schools or in community colleges, we know exactly what that looks like on the ground. And so continuing to try and find win-win ways to do that, to find that funding and get it in the right hands as efficiently as possible is, I think, going to be part of the marker. And I think this report sets that up. That efficiency will come from everybody rowing in the same direction. And we increasingly see that here, right? Like, look at the multiple agencies involved. And so I take great heart in that.
Well, look, and thank you, Jason and Laz, Dr. Lopez, for continuing to engage in this important topic. And I think this report sets us, to your point, Jason, to really start putting out some policy positions to help navigate this for employers to be able to move forward, right? And really being able to implement. And I'm even just looking at one of the questions that came in from Craig Kissinger, who has also been engaged really from the employer lens, is how do we better share this information with employers across the state, right? And, one of the things that I'll add, and then anyone else on the committee, please chime in. It starts with local chambers and local organizations to really bring this forward with their memberships. You have to be able to understand that a lot of times employers, they don't have time, right? Unless there's an easy button, it makes it really hard for this to being able to continue to get in part and embedded within the employer strategy. So the more ways we can get the information to our apprenticeship specialists, our Chamber of Commerce, our different workforce boards across the state to really start disseminating it from a local lens, the better. And that's kind of where I see the opportunity. And then look, it also starts at the school districts too. It starts at the different levels of the community colleges. I see Corey Young on here from City College, right? The more ways we could start promoting this is at those employer trade associations, but also across the board, promoting, amplifying, and taking that to that next level. But anyone else on the panel here have any other thoughts of how do we expand this, get this out across the board?
Well, Daniel, I think you said it well when you said that we need to have everyone engaging these employers, right? And trying to make it as easy as possible for our employers. I know myself and a couple other EFE directors from across the state meet with employers on a regular basis to show them what are the steps to find them students that are actively engaged or actively wanting to pursue these types of internships, to where it's not the job of the employer to go out and hunt down these students, right? We're trying to give them students to make it as easy as possible with them on that front. So just a constant conversation. And I'll be honest, a little bit of competitive spirit between employers is not a bad thing. To go to a competitor of one and say, hey, your competitor just took 2 or 3 interns, for a summer program. Why are you not participating with that? So using a little bit of that competition is always a good thing, I found.
Yeah, and look, a lot of times with that, at least I'll point it to the company I work for, Aon. We steal each other's competition all the time, right? And if you can be one of the first or one of the amplifiers that really helps starts thinking about a new innovative way, it makes it more streamlined, right? It makes it more of an easier way to really lure in talent and create an opportunity within your workforce to start thinking differently. So I think the more ways you can promote, more ways you can get it out there, the better. And it starts to highlight, the broad talent you're bringing into your workforce, which is always a good thing. All right. Let me throw it. Steve LeFevre, I would love your take. If you could just jump in on anything around the report more broadly that you were focused on. I'm excited I got Steve as my vice chair to make sure, we're rocking and rolling around WBL for us moving forward. But Steve, could I ask you just to chime in for a minute?
Yeah, sure. From those that don't know, I come from the construction trades apprenticeship industry. Well established. I mean, our registered program goes back to 1945. So one thing is that, apprenticeship works. But apprenticeship is work-based learning. Work-based learning works too, and there's a lot of new terminology, youth apprenticeships, internships, pre-apprenticeship, that's all the new buzz. And that's been the beauty of this work, coming from both national and state and looking, across the board. I typically represent more larger metropolitan areas where the market share and the work is frequent and prevalent. But this approach gets all the way down into, let's just start with ISPE. To every high school out there, into every community college. And really, when we start talking about alignment, not only with the data, but the resources and tools and the communication, this is where I feel that, this is going to benefit every workforce out there. Putting the resources into apprenticeship specialists and intermediaries as well, too, where this is no longer a secret. I always looked at apprenticeship as the best kept secret out there because nobody was talking about it. So let's not just talk about apprenticeship. Let's talk about all of the work-based learning opportunities out there and the additional resources there too. So seeing this come together and making the recommendations only makes us feel, much stronger, not only just in the larger metropolitan areas, but, across the state as a whole, that, we are building pipelines, from the high schools all the way through directly to the employers where the work's being performed. So this is all good work. And, to end it there, we need to keep talking about it, keep partnering with, all of our partners out there and helping introduce the young workforce, to the work itself.
Thanks, Steve. I'm now if you do have a question, please throw it into the chat. I do have one. Funding is not my specialty, but I will read it. It's from Kelly Brown. For WIOA providers who have WBL funds allocated in their contracts, do you believe that these funds can be utilized to support small businesses who have pre-apprenticeship programs to support their programs via payments of expenses? For example, we have a newly created comprehensive pre-apprenticeship program that ties to registered apprenticeship program and would like to support a nonprofit partner of expenses. I am probably not the best to answer that, but I will have maybe Jen Foyle. Can you comment on that as probably someone who could? And you probably just rolled your eyes at me, but that's okay.
I did. I will comment and say that I have noted that, Kelly. So I will get back to you on that. I need to talk to Julio Rodriguez for sure. I don't want to misspeak for DCO and Title I.
I cannot answer this, but I would like to make one comment about that. And this came up earlier when looking at the apprenticeship data. I think it was Dan who was talking, and the slight decline in the construction, but the increase in other
Yeah.
kinds of apprenticeships. And we know, right, in workforce development broadly, there's a big movement for what those of us who are aware of the history of this would consider non-traditional apprenticeships, right? And making those common apprenticeships. And so I just want to call out that I think questions like this come with that move to an expanded range of career pathways in which apprenticeships exist. And that's part of the overall infrastructure, just like improving our data collection systems is part of the overall infrastructure, is how we make sure that our agencies have enough people to answer these kind of questions and help people out. Because again, on the employer side, it's things like this that can have me as an employer go, yeah, I was all into this, but now like the devil is in the details, and there are a lot of details. I'm out. And so I think this is a great example of that. And I appreciate Kelly asking this. So
Kelly, we will follow up with you around that. Julio is not on, but Julio is usually my go-to on anything around funding. So we'll make sure we get you that back on. Okay. I'm trying to think. I think is there any more questions? Okay. Well, look, I'm somebody, does anybody else have anything else they want to add and or questions from the registrant side?
The only thing I wanted to mention, just to make
Please.
sure that people, the only thing else I wanted to mention so people are aware is that this board did approve a year ago a framework for in-school youth interested in youth apprenticeship that really does define what a quality one looks like. So feel free to check out our website to find that. It is part of the definition that was adopted, and it was informed by really the national work groups from PAYA and their work. So it aligns to it. So it's a good place to start if you want to see how to define and you're trying to create something. And I certainly welcome anybody to reach out to me if they want to. So I just wanted to highlight that. Thanks, Dan.
Yeah, and Laz, we actually got a good question that I think this group can probably answer, and I'm happy Corey Young is also on the line too, which is what support or changes may be in the work to help community college build more robust apprenticeship programs. And Corey, can I throw you in on this one? I see you're on mute and I see your lovely headshot. I don't know if you can get on video, but I think the work that City Colleges has done across apprenticeship programs and really starting to engage and really start building with employers has really taken off in Chicago. Corey, are you there? Maybe he's put me on mute. Oh, there he is. Hey, man. Oh, you're driving. Oh, my God. Even worse.
No, I literally just parked. So perfect timing. Can you hear me?
Yeah. Did you get my question?
I think so, yes.
Okay, dig in.
Yeah, so I think what I would say is, and you alluded to it earlier, is when you mentioned what every employer can do, I think that one thing most important for our employers that we bring along on the journey is one size doesn't fit all. And I think it would be great for them to understand that what works for one doesn't work for all. And so to your point, we've really tried to lean into both creating models that work for employers, but then also for our students and the apprentices. So that can range everywhere from a 6-month to the full 3-year, typically the manufacturing apprenticeships that are registered. And so as well as both a variation of registered and non. So I think just having that flexibility is probably the biggest key we've seen for success. What else for that question?
And then Corey, doesn't ICCB, aren't you part of an apprenticeship learning community, so that you all are helping other community colleges across the state help set up programs? And it's not just city colleges.
Yeah. No, and that's great. I think as you mentioned, Dan, the growth of that has already gone from 50% to 80% of the colleges doing that. And so the intent is to, one, just scale apprenticeships within all of the community colleges. So yes, that work group, we met earlier today. have lined up a whole series of topics, from employer engagement to funding for those other community colleges to bring everyone along on the same journey. I think even within the colleges, the infrastructure, I think, for a lot of colleges is there. For those that have apprenticeships, I think that, through working with like the Aons of the world, the infrastructure is there. Now we just need to bring more employers along on the journey. And I think one thing that even I appreciate about this report would be the definitions. So even as a group, as we mentioned, pre-apprenticeships sort of been stagnant. Several months ago, all the community colleges met at Elgin, who is a leader in pre-apprenticeship space, to just learn what are they doing? What are their models? And I think that meeting started with, what is the definition of a pre-apprenticeship? And we kind of compared the federal and the state and the local to kind of come to an agreement of what a pre-apprenticeship should include. And so, yeah, so I think to your point, just a lot of organizing behind the scenes to kind of bring up the whole state.
Thanks, Corey. Any other questions? Okay, well, I'm going to give people 15 minutes back of their day. I think one of the biggest things that I will tell you from the participants on the line, if you do have any thoughts, do have any feedback, please do reach out to myself, Jen Foyle, or Antonio as we're starting to build this. Our goal is to get this report locked in, ready to go in the coming weeks. So we appreciate any feedback you may have. As we do launch this, get this report out there, our goal is to get this out on a national scale, but also really start emphasizing it across Illinois to different employer groups as well as others to really talk about how we could start doing this and moving forward through policy and recommendations. And if anybody has any questions or need anything, please don't hesitate to reach out. And thank you to our working group members that really helped make this happen. So big shout out to all of you, Jason, Heather, Terry, Corey, others for really your continued support and partnership. So thank you, thank you, thank you. Thanks, guys. Have a good rest of the day. Bye-bye.
Thank you, everyone. This will be available on the Illinois Workforce Academy. Have a wonderful day.